What's up you guys? Welcome to my video. Today, I will be demonstrating to you the anatomical movement. By the way, I am your instructor, Jonas Ibanez. Now, let's first define what is an anatomical movement. Anatomical movement can be defined as the act or instance of moving the bodily structures or as the change of the position in one or more of the joints of the body. Without further ado, I will now discussing and demonstrating the anatomical movement of the body. The first set of anatomical movement is the flexion and extension. The term flexion is by decreasing the angle of the joint and by bending the joint, and the extension is increasing the angle of the joint and straightening the joint. Okay, so upon doing the flexion, as you can see, so flexing both arms toward the face, this is how we do flexion. Extension, so in doing the extension, this is the conjugate of flexion, flexing your both arms against your face, and then the arms are shoulder level, your wrist in a preparatory position. So again, flexion and extension. And for our next set, which is abduction and adduction. Abduction, it is the movement of the limb away from the midline of the body. Adduction, it is the movement of the limb towards to the body midline. So here's how we're gonna do the abduction and adduction. In doing the abduction, we will raise one leg sideways away from our body's midline, while in doing the adduction is by bringing back our leg to its original position. So again, abduction and adduction. Moving on to the internal and external rotation. Internal rotation is rotating a joint towards the midline. External rotation is rotating a joint away from the midline. So here's an example of internal and external rotation. Internal and external. And for the next set, we have elevation and depression. Elevation refers to the movement in a superior direction. Depression refers to the movement in an inferior direction. So here's how we're gonna properly execute the elevation and depression movement. So as you can see, elevation is when we shrug our shoulders, while depression is by bringing it back to its original position. So once again, elevation and depression. And for the next pair, which is the pronation and supination. Pronation, it describes a rotational movement of the forearm that results in palm facing posteriorly. And in supination, it describes the motion of the turning the palm anteriorly. So in pronation, I rotate my forearm so that my palm will be facing posteriorly, while in supination, I rotate it back to its original position so that my palm will be facing anteriorly. So let's proceed to our sixth set of an anatomical movement, which is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Dorsiflexion is the backward bending and contracting of your foot. This is the movement of the ankle elevating the sole, while plantar flexion refers to the movement of the foot in a downward motion away from the body. It is the extending of the ankle while elevating the heel. So here's how dorsiflexion and plantar flexion looks like. Plantar flexion is when you stretch your foot inferiorly and your toes of your foot pointing downward. And in dorsiflexion is when your toes pointing upward or superiorly. So once again, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. And for the seventh pair, which is the inversion and eversion. Inversion is when rotating the ankle so that the sole of the foot points towards the other. And in eversion is when rotating the ankle so that the sole of the foot points away from the other. Okay, so inversion, soles turns towards body's midline. And inversion, soles turns away from body's midline. Now to our eighth pair of anatomical movement, which is the opposition and reposition. Opposition. It is the thumb movement that brings the tip of the thumb in contact with the tip of a finger. And reposition, it is a movement that moves the thumb and the little finger away from each other. So here's how I will gonna properly execute the opposition and reposition. So in opposition, my thumb and my little finger contact with each other, while reposition is by moving it away. So once again, opposition and reposition. And now, let's continue to our ninth pair, which is the protraction and retraction. Protraction. It is moving a part of the body anteriorly in the horizontal plane. And retraction, it is the opposite motion with the scapula being pulled posteriorly and medially towards the vertebral column. As you can see, in retraction, I move scapulae towards the spine, while in protraction, I move scapulae away from it. And for the last anatomical movement of the body, which is the circumduction. Circumduction is the movement of the body region in a circular manner. It is also described as making circle movements. So, to properly execute the circumduction, we raise our arm and then move it in a circular motion. So, that's it for the anatomical movement and terminologies.